Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all doing well. And today, my friends, we're back with a showdown between Grand Cathay and Khorne here in domination mode. It's going to be a dragon-blooded Lord of Yin facing off against the Herald of Khorne. This is also a duel between two very high-level players. This was in one of the Summer Championship qualifiers. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. And it's a pretty cool look at a Cathay powder build. So this build and battle took place just before the change to shooting, which made it so you were able to stack units. So this is still taking place in a meta essentially where shooting was as it was before and as it is now. So it was kind of before the change, and that just got reverted relatively recently. Now, as far as the build goes for Grand Cathay, it is going to be Jade Warriors into the sunset, and Jade Warriors don't do a terrible job at holding off Khorne Warriors. For their price point, you can see they have pretty good melee defense at 45 here, and yeah, they're not going to like beat down any Khorne Warriors, but they will hold and do have pretty good stats. Honestly, they're pretty similar to like Dwarf Infantry. Now in the secondary line, it's going to be Iron Hail Gunners, which are one of the best answers to Khorne in general. Now, what Khorne usually does, though, is they just get a bunch of Furies and shut these down, and then your melee loses their melee, and that's really one of the big issues that Grand Cathay does run into. But I mean, if Iron Hail Gunners can find a way to shoot, if you're one of those players who's really good at Empire, at Vampire Coast, you're able to stack your units up in such a way that they have an opening to shoot through, they can do some serious damage and really are the deciding factor. And I personally think that was kind of one of the reasons why powder factions in general struggled a little bit, is because of how difficult it is to get line of sight with the Iron Hail Gunners and handgunners and things like that. But that really is kind of the difference between people like Anticity, for example, who really specialize at these gun factions like Vampire Coast. They can make it work, but for the average player who's just getting into the game, using powder is very, very tough. Now in the back, it's going to be long spears, backed up by more long spears. We have some Celestial Dragon Guard. This is a very common tactic in domination mode, especially on this map for Grand Cathay. You know, Celestial Dragon Guard are, in theory, quite good against Khorne, right? They have anti-large against some of the spawn. They have good armor. And, you know, honestly, they can fight most of the Khorne roster. They can trade with the Warriors very effectively. The one thing that they trade very poorly into is Exalted Bloodletters and Bloodletters in general. But aside from that, they hold. So what you do with Grand Cathay, you get a big missile box, very traditional like Warhammer 2 formation. You move up to the middle, and then you send some really tanky elite infantry off to the side that can hold until you can get there with reinforcements. Now, Dragon-Blooded Lord of Yin is basically an auto-take in this matchup. You know, she does some work. The big AoE Talons of the Night will almost one-shot an infantry unit if you can catch them. Ancestral Warriors are very good. It gives you a nice buffer, and Summons are just always powerful, and of course, the slow isn't bad. Now, looking at the Khorne Force, going to be a classic kind of Khorne build here. We have the double cultist backed up by the Herald of Khorne. We do also have the Chaos Warriors of Khorne spawn Bloodletters, and this is usually what Khorne does on this map. So they grab objective number 3, they just kind of sit something over there, because Cathay is really not going to go for your back objectives. They usually just try and hold their 2. If you guys are wondering like how the dwarves are going to be playing in domination mode when some Mortal Empires comes, it's probably going to be just like Cathay is right now, except with less mobility and maybe slightly better infantry and shooting. But looking here, Khorne always goes for the back objective on this map, which is very, very smart. You go for the back objective. It's going to force Cathay into a weird situation where they don't necessarily have their fancy formation, because look at how good this formation is. Everybody here is getting the Harmony buff. They're all laughing it up all the way to the bank, melee attack, everything that you're enjoying as a Cathay player. Now, up here in the front, we do get the first Vortex coming down, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember this replay correctly. The Dragon-Blooded Lord will be dropping the Talons of the Night, probably on the Khorne Warriors. And the two, you know, nasty cultists looking to drop some summons. Now, this, I believe, was pre-nerf on the cultists, but it's such an interesting replay, we had to show it to you guys here. But the two cultists can indeed do the instant summons, which has since been nerfed. The cultist meta has shifted quite a bit, but again, they're still a unit that might see some play. It depends on the matchup, depends on the cultist. Some of them, I think, like the Nurgle cultist is kind of dead in the water because of the fact that it needs to get like damaged and beat up to actually do its summons, which is, you know, it's kind of hard to actually damage them, because with the healing, like most people like just don't want to target them. They're pretty hard to kill unless they really overextend themselves and put themselves in a bad situation. But Jade Warriors moving up in the front, nice harmonious formation. We got the spears in the back, and yeah, this is a pretty ideal engagement position for the forces of Cathay, because you have these two chokes, right? You have this wall here, like in a normal land battle type map like Oakenhammer, like there would be Cornhounds like running around, and you would just be like in an absolute nightmare scenario, right? But on this map, in many domination maps, a couple of them are conducive to Cathay style of play. Like if we're looking at Arnheim, for example, if we're looking at this map, and you know, Broken Lake Gully isn't terrible either. It has a nice shooting gallery in the middle. Now, first spell is coming down, and this spell is really good because it pulls units in, and very slow units like the Chaos Warriors of Khorne aren't really able to dodge this. And the huge Talons of the Night coming up, ripping up these Khorne Warriors. Beautiful damage for sure. And look at that. That was definitely an overcasted one. But immediately the Khorne player is going to be unsummoning these units, which it does put them back in the pool and get you the reinforcements, but they will be getting unsummoned here in a hot second, and there you go. So they are back. They're going to go back to Khorne with their tails between their legs. That is for sure. Now, Khorne looking like they want to play the side objective here, so we see Khorne just sitting here with Exalted Bloodletters. A lot of units looking to really jump on this back point. Objectives are now open, so the middle objective instantly goes to Grand Cathay, and this is really a big skill set in domination mode, is knowing how much you need to defend different points, especially for slower factions like Grand Cathay, because you're not super quick, you know, you kind of got 30 speed on your infantry, and the handgunners here, the Iron Tails are a little bit quicker, but overall it's very, very stressful. You got to know how to allocate your resources very effectively. Same with Nurgle too. Nurgle's incredibly slow, like I said, so getting the right amount of units to points to either be able to hold it or take it from your opponent is pretty big. And Khorne's going to be going for like a big, deep push here. We get the Bloodletters coming across, we get Spawn, we get double Furies up in the sky. Pretty much the nightmare of all Cathay players is like 2 Furies just flying at your gun line. But I have a feeling that, oh, look at this, Talons of the Night coming down. Is it going to catch any of these guys? Okay, it does. It just barely grabs some of the Exalted Bloodletters. They do have spell resist, which is pretty good, 25%. So that will mitigate some of the damage, but imagine another 25% on top of that would have been pretty substantial. So, Exalted Bloodletters do get their pickles tickled, but not too bad. Cannon coming in from Grand Cathay in the back, good to start bombarding in. And Khorne is just kind of threatening this push here. They have a couple warriors. The back objective they've obviously taken, and this is not a position they want to push. So it's really going to be super important for Cathay to try and hold this position. Now, they do have this Celestial Dragon Guard. The first of the powder shooting up and getting a nice volley into the Chaos Furies, but their joy is going to be short-lived. These ladies are going to be attacked by the Furies in the sky. So here they come. The Furies have descended on the Gunners, but Cathay is going to be responding by summoning in the Ancestral Warriors, which I love. This is a really, really nice choice. So the Warriors pour from the, well, I wouldn't say the warp, but from the Dragon Emperor's domain, and they're going to be flanking into the back of these spawns. That's a really useful anti-large tool, which will help the Celestial Dragon Guard maybe hold the front, but immediately a Cult of Summon coming in, going to be shutting down the backfield here and really putting quite a bit of hurt on the Cathay forces. So the Iron Hail Gunners are immediately shut down by the Bloodletters here, and these ladies are going to be forced back. Not an engagement they want, but we do get some Lawnmower Riders coming in, so Lawnmower Riders, as I like to call them. They move in, they take down the Chaos Furies, and the other Chaos Furies also hammered pretty heavily by the Dragon-Blooded Lord, as well as the Peasant Spears, which killed them surprisingly quick, actually, because they are infantry size, so the Spears don't really get much of a bonus. But honestly, Cathay's doing a pretty good job pulling here. Here comes another big Vortex. So powerful. And honestly, without that spell is carrying Cathay so hard in this matchup. The Exalted Bloodletters here getting tossed up pretty good. It also does catch them with the spawn. Doesn't do a ton of damage, but does lock them in place. The Celestial Dragon Guard did get beaten down by the Exalted Bloodletters, but the Ancestral Halberds still holding, and some of the gun units are online, but, you know, Fury spam is very, very good here. And Longmore Riders cost 1,500, give or take, right? I think it's like 1,400 now, I can't remember. But basically, Furies only cost 550, right? So what ends up happening is you can only defend so many resources, whereas the Furies can be spammed all over the place and typically will trade well. But the Lawnmower Riders are moving in, getting a big jump here into the Furies of Khorne. So the Khorne Furies going to be paying the Troll Toll as the Lawnmower Riders and the Peasant Horsemen do move in. Peasant Horsemen aren't a terrible tool at dealing with the Furies and these type of flying units. I mean, if we're talking like Vampire Counts and Felbats, like, yeah, Jade Lancers and Peasant Horsemen will deal with those fine. Furies are just a little bit more fighty. They certainly do some work. Now, Jade Warriors holding on the objective pretty well, fighting back against the Demons of Khorne. Obviously, they're going to be losing this fight, but they will hold and buy some time for the Cathay reinforcements to arrive. And honestly, I thought that trade was going to go way worse for Grand Cathay. We've seen the double Cultists, we do also see the Herald of Khorne, but it's been some masterful play for sure, as we do get the Longmore Riders and the Peasant Horsemen moving in and dragging down some of the isolated spawn. And really the big thing has been those vortexes. The Talons of the Night is just so incredibly cost-effective against those blob units. Peasant Horsemen here are paying the Troll Toll a little bit, but for the most part are able to drag down the spawn. And now Grand Cathay has a pretty substantial lead, so Khorne is going to have to really rethink their strategy here. Probably going to have to do a bull rush on the middle. So Khorne is gathering its forces as the Iron Hail Gunners. These guys have the best job in all of Cathay. They're just like watching all their buddies fight to the death over here. They're like, this is pretty cool. Let's get to hang out and watch. Don't really have to do a whole lot. You know, not bad. Flesh Hounds are going to be coming around the side, looking to loop and maybe get on the cannon, put a little bit of backfield pressure. That's one thing I would have liked to have maybe seen more, maybe some more Flesh Hounds, but again, I don't think this position was like terribly vulnerable to it. But look at this, the tenacity of Khorne infantry might be able to pull this objective off. They are just buzzsawing through these Cathay troops and really not losing too many models in the process. You know, the classic adage that the best offense, well, the best defense is a good offense, I suppose, is very true in the case of Khorne. Is their melee defense not being, you know, stellar, it doesn't really matter too much if they just take the skulls of all their enemies here. So spears are being unsummoned, a bit of a strange choice. I think leaving those spears to sandwich the Exalted Bloodletters would be smart. I think that was probably something that was done like without looking in that area. But Khorne's now going to be moving in the middle, and the soldiers of Grand Cathay stand firm, and you know, it's the closest you can get to playing the Empire, really. Powder, but again, I really thought Cathay would be I guess they just lack the dynamics of the Empire, but yeah, these soldiers stand at the ready. Look at them getting in the formation. That's actually pretty cool looking as the Khorne warriors advance under the Iron Hail gunner fire. Very, very epic cinematic. And here comes the warriors of Khorne, and Grand Cathay, the bastion, stands firm. But man, look how much bigger these guys are. They're pretty massive for sure, but you know, they hold, and strength and harmony here. Iron Hail Gunners putting some serious hurt on these warriors. The Dragon-Blooded Lord going to be flying overhead. We do get some Jade Warrior crossbows moving in. A little bit of an unfortunate one for Grand Cathay here in the backfield as the Flesh Hounds were able to kind of sneak through the bushes, but it looks like they're going to go after Iron Hails instead of shutting down the cannon. I guess the Halberd is going to shut those guys down, and yeah, big Flesh Hound jump, and now Grand Cathay is in the danger zone a little bit, but honestly, a lot of their shooting is online here. Iron Hail Gunners ripping these Chaos Warriors to shreds, also shooting into these Chaos Warriors. The Spawn are probably going to be the next target, but this is a really good showcase of like boxed shooting, having them in the box so they can turn effectively, and really, really good target priority here from the Chaos player, who is Rhineless, actually one of the top, I think, 16 players in Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer at the moment. Very, very high level. I know they've had a couple tournament wins, so yeah, certainly showing why here. And on the other side, we do see the Exalted Bloodletter still causing problems for Grand Cathay, but Grand Cathay is getting to the point where they could maybe win on one objective. And another Celestial Dragon Guard has made it over here. Most likely will be able to dispatch the demonic units, because Khorne's pretty all in the middle situation. I would imagine Khorne, though, is very, very behind in value, as we do get the big old Bulldog moving in here, going to be pushing into the old Iron Hail Gunners. Harmony is active, going to give him a little bit of a leadership buff, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll help him hold. The Dragon-Blooded Lord also engaging. Cathay Infantry being buckled, but they're getting very, very close to winning this game, and it's going to be hard to push them off. They have a pretty good stream of reinforcements. Here in the backfield, we get the Halberds, and a very cost-effective trade for Khorne. These Chaos Warrior Halberds here able to drag down some of the Jade Lancers, also making their way towards the cannons. You know, if this was a long-term battle, these Halberds would be able to just shut all this down, basically. But another Iron Hail Gunner coming in. We get the Jade Warrior Crossbows, and I have to say, it's really, really cool to see effective use of Cathay Powder. So often in the Khorne matchup, especially previously when the Cultists were able to summon instantly like they were in this game, we would see situations where you would just never be able to get shooting off, and it just got shut down so badly, and it was such a scrap. But in this case, Cathay was actually able to shoot pretty effectively, and we can see it has yielded a bit of fruit here. Now, is Khorne going to go for the back objective with more units? We see the Exalted Bloodletters off kind of on the side. It looks like they might have overpathed a little bit. Iron Hail Gunners just getting on the objective. You know, they have decent capture weight, so they're just going to want to sit here and buy as much time as they can. Cathay's getting very, very close to winning here. Iron Hail Gunners blasting from all sides. Some of the Jade Warriors are retreating. They're broken, so the crossbows are going to be left to fight these giant silver-shielded warriors here. Khorne is in the middle, cannons going downtown, continuing to one-shot the Chaos Spawn models as they hit. The Brave Peasant Spears, though, really, really the MVPs here, holding this objective against the demons and mortals of the Blood God. Cannon shots continuing to pound down the spawn, reducing the capture weight that Khorne has here. And you can see that Chaos Warhounds have been summoned, so Chaos Warhounds have the capture weight of infantry, so that's why the Khorne player brought those in. And also, they're not bad at clearing out spearmen, so Khorne might be able to get the capture weight here, but even that being the case, Khorne inevitably is pushing back Cathay, which is just kind of the story of life here. But the thing is Grand Cathay was able to hold long enough that they now have the back objective here, and I would imagine Cathay was up by a pretty substantial amount of army value damage. But Khorne does start to close the gap as their more cost-effective infantry are getting in there. Much of the shooting, I guess, is shut down, although we still do have Iron Hails as well as crossbows here. Furies in the back on top of the cannons, but that is going to be Game Blouse's victory for Grand Cathay. GG, well played. Certainly a really, really fun match. And I love the build. I thought it was so cool. I love powder and like tanky infantry. I mean, that's one of the reasons why when Warhammer 1 came out, I just love playing dwarves so much. And the Empire is kind of a little bit of an in-between because you get squishy infantry, but really good powder and really, really good cav. Like Empire Cavalry is for sure better than Grand Cathay. Demogryph Knights, Knights of the Blazing Sun, you know, Reichsguard are basically Griffin Legion. So, I mean, they might see a little bit more play in domination mode. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm really excited to kind of get my hands on that and test it out eventually. But yeah, really good play. And the big thing was Cathay allocating the proper number of units and the proper composition of units to defend the side flank against that initial Khorne push. Because without that, you know, Grand Cathay, if they lose that battle and get pushed off, they just lose the game probably. It doesn't matter if they have the middle. Cathay's really bad at recapturing objectives. They need to hold. And they were able to hold, and that is where they got the victory. So GG, well played. And that was a good showcase, right? Like, a lot of times when you run into like Cathay victory replays and domination and just in general on, you know, YouTube, most of the ones I've seen are big skill discrepancies. You'll see somebody who is just much better than their opponent on Cathay, beating like a Khorne player. But this was a high level match between two very, very skilled tournament players. We have Rhineless, and he mentioned that his opponent was someone who we saw frequently winning Warhammer 2 tournaments. So clearly these are good players. So that's really cool to see that showcase. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this one. We'll see you on the other side. Take care of yourselves. Adios. Do widzenia. Get some rest. That is it for tonight.